All right, everyone. Welcome to today's The Step Up and Stand Out Spotlight Show with me, your host, Naina Kaputi. I'm really excited to have Ungenita Prevost join me as my guest today. She is a superstar. I don't even remember how I came across her profile on LinkedIn, but when I read her profile, I was like, I have to connect with this woman and I have to have her on my show. She is the founder and creator of selling in stilettos, networking in stilettos, FEMME 500, the $1 Billion Podcast host, and a myriad of other things. So I'm going to let Ungenita introduce herself and share a little bit more before we dive deeper into getting visibility and building social capital on LinkedIn and beyond.
Thank you so much, Nina, for having me. I'm so excited to be here. By the way, this is my first live broadcast on LinkedIn, I have to tell you.
Very cool. You're doing great. And I know it's a little tricky using StreamYard, as a third party. I'm hoping that LinkedIn does move forward with having lives directly on LinkedIn. That would be so much more simpler.
Yes.
Yeah,
streamline the process.
Yes. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So go ahead and share a little bit more about your story. Another thing that really caught my attention was where you mentioned you aged out of the foster
Yes.
system at 18, and then you've gone on to do so much. And I think it's so inspiring. So if you want to start with that, and then we can talk about.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I grew up in New Orleans, and at about 12, actually about 12 and a half, I discovered that my then mother wasn't my sort of real mother. And I met my biological mother, but unfortunately, we had some challenges, and I ended up in foster care. So I lived in the children's shelter around the time I think I was like 15 years old. I lived in the children's shelter. Then I was placed in a group home, and I lived in a few different group homes until I was aged out of the foster care system at 18. And this is something that most people that read my bio or attend my events, they know very well, that I've experienced every financial hardship you can possibly imagine: homeless, jobless, carless, cashless, and parentless. It's why I say don't let the glitz and glam fool you, because most of the time when people see me, they just see the richest part of the story, and they sort of gloss over the rags part of the story. So what really I think people resonate with is the fact that the three skill sets that I mastered, I can say that honestly, and have the track record to prove it. The three skills that I mastered are sales, communication, and networking. And all of those skills came via or out of survival. Because when I was aged out, when they age you out of the system, you're on the street. They tell you, at 18, you got to go. Sometimes they give you a little bit more time, but essentially you're out on the street. And so I had to get a job. I mean, I started working when I was 15. So I knew once I was in the foster care system, I knew, the days were numbered. So I already had a work ethic. I already knew how to secure employment. I already knew how to talk to people, sell myself, and of course, networking. And when I went on to do pursue other careers, it was always networking. And so over the years, I would introduce people, I would create these collaborations, I would refer people. It was just something that I did for myself, but I also did for other people. But it wasn't until about, I guess, 2019 that I decided that I really wanted to take this to market in a very bold and robust way, because I saw a need in the market, because so many women struggle with networking. They're on social media and they're not making money. I've coined two terms: socially bankrupt and I say underpaid socialites. So most women are either socially bankrupt or they're underpaid socialites. So what that means is they have all of this attention, and oftentimes they have the visibility, but it's not backed by money.
Mm.
And there's a problem.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm sorry, my image keeps glitching, so just don't look at me. Again, this is something to do with StreamYard, so I just want to warn you. But that is such a powerful story, and that's something we all need to hear. I just wanted to recognize people who have signed in on LinkedIn, Denise and Carlota, who I know is a friend of yours, and we just connected. And Denise says, "What a story, Ungenita." So it's very inspiring. So yeah, so I see that. I think the biggest issues we have as women, as you said, even if we get visibility on platforms like LinkedIn or social media or even, in person, we don't know how to sell. I think that comes from maybe imposter syndrome, always feeling you're not good enough, you don't deserve the success. So I'd love to get maybe your three top tips on how, if we have a network or we have the visibility, what can we do to convert that or monetize it? And I also wanted to, like, when you talk about monetizing, is it financial monetization, or is it also like monetizing where you get more speaking engagements, maybe you get a promotion in your career, so it doesn't just apply to entrepreneurs, but any woman who wants to be a thought leader and wants to get, more, whatever it is in terms of monetization. But of course, definitely making money is a huge part of that. So I'd love to hear some of your top, I mean, not some of your top three tips for doing that.
I'm going to do my best to break it down because you've given me so many questions. I want to make sure that I answer all of them. So I want to
Okay.
start with imposter syndrome. Okay, I think imposter syndrome is definitely part of the problem. Women tend to practice, we as women, we have a tendency to practice diminishment, and we sort of play down our accomplishments. It's one of the reasons why in the communication piece, I show women how to own their story. That's why now I tell my story. I'm not embarrassed. At one time I was embarrassed, but I'm not embarrassed now. Yes, I, went through hardships, and life was difficult. It wasn't always glamorous. And I think it's important that women share their stories. Women stop diminishing themselves. That is the piece that leads to imposter syndrome, because you go on social media and you think you have to be someone you're not, because you think that you have to sell this image, and this image oftentimes is not who you are. So there's the disconnect. The other piece I want to talk about is the network gap. So we often talk about the gender equity gap. We talk about the gender investment gap, but there is such a thing. And you can go to my Networking in Stilettos page, and I pull the data from LinkedIn. The gender network gap exists. So many people think that I created this. I didn't create it. Like, LinkedIn did the study. And it shows women don't have the connections and the collaborations that they need to not only elevate their social status, but their financial status. So when we were taught, about, 12 years ago, this whole idea of going on social media, no one, including the powers that be, no one taught us how to quote unquote social network. So we're just showing up, and we're told to be visible. We're told to post every day. We're told to go live. We're told to make ourselves into these celebrities. Okay. So people will quote unquote like us. And that's why when you look at the stats, only 6% of women cross the 6-figure mark. Only 2% of women cross the $1 million mark. But when you look online, everyone's rich and famous. Everyone's visible. Everyone has an amazing life. But I've trained thousands of women, and I've heard the horror stories. And I have women that come to me every week, and they're telling me about their 5,000, this, and their 10,000 that, and they can't afford to sign up for a program. So there's a problem. So that's why I say, stop chasing fans, followers, and likes, and monetize your network. You will not monetize your network if you don't know how to build social capital. I'm the first woman in the world to step up and really solve this issue. And it's why some women look like, whoa, where did this come from? Because you were never taught. I'm the first woman to say, you know what, ladies, There's a reason that the gender network gap exists, because you were not taught how to build social capital. And what does social capital mean? It's when you have a network. I call it the $1 billion Rolodex. And I know sometimes people think, whoa, some people are now calling it a $1 trillion Rolodex, but that's another story. But here's the deal. When you build social capital, you are connecting with people that are going to bring resources into your life, people that are going to be of value to your life. Sometimes there's an exchange of money, but sometimes there's not. Oftentimes, I leverage my network through referrals, through partnerships, through introductions, like this particular, speaking engagement. So that's the other issue. Women are so busy, and there's hundreds of women's networks out there that literally will throw you into, a room and tell you to sell, and everyone's forcing the sale, forcing the sale, forcing the sale. They're not building relationships. Forget social capital. And then they wonder. They look up and they go, you know what? I spent, $500, $600, $700 on this network, and I didn't monetize it. Well, you were never taught a framework, and it's really important. I'm on a mission to transform the lives of 10 million women. So please make sure that you start when you share this social capital piece. Please make sure that you share this piece and let people know Ungenita Prevost is the first woman in the world to step up and teach women how to build social capital. And it's imperative that you attend her event, Networking in Stilettos, because that's the first place that you're going to learn the framework, so you can stop wasting your time, you can stop chasing fans, followers, and likes, and you can stop spending your money on paid advertising that oftentimes doesn't work if you don't have the appropriate time, the appropriate investment, and the team to perfect a paid advertising strategy. I hope I covered everything.
Oh my gosh, you did cover a lot. And while you were chatting, Carlotta just shared that she is in your program, and she's been able to build social capital and monetize her network and expand her business and start new business. Exactly what you were saying, Janita. So, for people who are listening in and are still not sure what social capital is, because first of all, congratulations on being the first woman to talk about networking and the networking gap, and how we need to monetize our network. So can you explain to people who are new to this term social capital a little bit more about what it is?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll give you a tip. Now, this is a big tip I'm sharing. I normally share this tip at Networking in Stilettos. So if you want me to, if you want to learn more, I'm going to say this again. Attend Networking in Stilettos. You can go to FEMMEglobal500.com and register for Networking in Stilettos. But here's the framework. So what you want to do is you start with what I call a social capital matrix. And what that looks like is you design your own matrix. You look at the types of people that you need to connect with to facilitate your goals. So for example, if you are a coach or a consultant, you want to obviously connect with clients. You want to connect with joint venture partners. You want to connect with maybe, a mentor. You want to connect with possibly people that are hosting shows so you can get more speaking engagements. You also might want some media. You want people in PR. So you should have what I call this social capital matrix. So every time you connect with someone, you are thinking about your matrix. You're thinking about, okay, you know what? I want to book more speaking engagements. She's a podcast host. I'm going to connect with her and see if it's a good fit if I come on her show. That's the whole strategy. But oftentimes what women were taught to do is force the sale. So I just want to sell my MLM product, or I just want to sell my coaching package, or I just want to raise capital. And they forget all the other elements, all the other relationships that they can build that will lead to financial capital. But it starts with social capital. And I can't stress this enough. So please make sure, if you're resonating with this message, make sure that you go to FEMME Global 500, you register and start to share this concept and get the word out, because I'm on a mission to connect 10 million women with this information. It will change the world. It's world changing. It's world changing.
Thank you. And I experienced your ability to connect yesterday when we did that quick chat on Zoom, and then the next thing you did was connect me with Carlota. So, we often forget that, like, you make a connection, but you also connect someone along the way. And I just love that, and it was reminded me that I need to do that more often. Bring people together who have similar interests and collaborate. So my other question to you is: you are an expat. You now living in the UK, and a lot of women in my network are expats. So but yesterday when we had this conversation, you said that you didn't have too much of a struggle because maybe you already had your business established. But what about women who have maybe in-person or online businesses and or brick and mortar businesses, and then have to move across countries, across borders? How can you keep that momentum going and still, and also you're dealing with a lot of challenges and hurdles when you move to a new country, even if it's like you move from the UK to the US to UK, which is still a Western country. So, but I'm sure you still face some challenges. So do you want to share a little bit of how you've still kept that momentum going and continue to build your social capital and monetize your network?
Absolutely. So I want to say that I cheated because I started networking before I moved to
Okay.
the UK. So that's really the key, is start networking before. So people often wonder, like, how did you build this, global network? Well, I leveraged LinkedIn. Absolutely. I joined international networks. I joined expat communities. I already had a network. I'll tell you what was amazing. Every time I entered a country, I already had meetings scheduled. So I remember I was going to Amsterdam. I had meetings scheduled. I was going to Italy. I had meeting like Belgium, like Brussels. Like I would already have meetings scheduled because I met people online prior to. And then when I decided, okay, I'm going to France or I'm going to the Netherlands, I would, let people know. And then all of a sudden I'd sit in, the cafe, and I'd have like 3 or 4 meetings connecting with people in person when we were able to do that freely. So for me, it's about connecting with people before you get to the country. So that's the first thing that you want to do. And then you want to connect with the expat community. But I advise that you build your expat network, because it's really nice to have a supportive network. I'm in several expat communities, American expats living in London. I'm in the American expats living in Paris group. It's really important that you have that community, but also network with the locals. You don't want to just, sort of stay in this expat community. You want to have that broad, very robust network. So that's a really easy tip, is to start connecting before you land. So the minute you think that, what, I want to live in, I'm going to say Kuala Lumpur. Okay. Like the minute you think you want to live there, start connecting with people in that city, country.
I love that. And I think it doesn't just relate to expats, it relates to anyone who's
Absolutely.
travel,
Yeah.
even if you're going on, business trip or vacation.
Yeah.
I love that, being, instead of being proactive instead of being reactive, right? And that's, I think, an issue that a lot of us have. And I think now with platforms like LinkedIn, it makes it so much easier to do that. Maybe, when I came to the US in 2002, there was barely any social media. It was so much harder. But now I think there are these opportunities to build amazing relationships. So talking about nurturing relationships, since you are a LinkedIn trainer, you host your events through LinkedIn, what are some tips that people could use to build networks, connect, and get more visibility on LinkedIn and also monetize it?
Oh yes. By the way, I created LinkedIn in stilettos. So, so
Okay, so you have networking in
a half day
Seattle?
event. It's a half day event where
Okay,
I train women on LinkedIn. But
right.
LinkedIn is really about the DM, in my opinion. You
Okay.
know, mastering the DM. And I posted this last week. too often what people do is they go into pitch mode and they fill your inbox with spam. So my tip is find a common denominator. You have to go to the profile first, find the
Right.
common denominator, start from a personal standpoint. Hi, Nina, I see that you're in San Francisco. I grew up in the Bay Area. How's San Francisco? Like, what's going on in San Francisco? Like simple,
Right.
simple.
Right.
And then the
Right.
conversation starts with what the other person is doing, their interests are, right? That's where you start. Then you start asking what I call opening questions. So, Nina, tell me, do you like to network? I love to network. By the way, I have my own network. Oh, you have your own network. Awesome. Would you be interested in maybe doing a JV or a collab? I'm not selling. You see?
Right. Right. Right.
Simple. Then you don't get ghosted, because people often say, oh my gosh, people are ghosting me. Well, they're ghosting because you're forcing the sale. You're not communicating. And I
Right.
love this quote. Actually, there was a guy that interviewed Warren Buffett on LinkedIn, and Warren Buffett said, if you want to increase your net worth by 50%, hone your communication skills. And we're taught post content. We're taught create a marketing message. But guess what? Even the top content marketers in the world do not teach communication skills.
Mm.
And it's why women don't know how to perform in the DM. It's why people have a very difficult time communicating via phone. That's why women don't like sales calls. And let us
Right.
not forget the number one question. So what do you do? Women can't answer that question. Most women cannot answer that question. So what do you do? They go, don't. That's because they haven't been taught communication skills. I learned communication skills because when they aged me out of the system, I had no choice but to learn how to sell myself at job interviews. So I could pay for a bus pass, I could rent a room, I could eat. That's how it started for me. So I
That's
take this seriously.
That is very fantastic and so inspiring. And so I know we're almost at our 30 minutes. We started a little later. So, again, coming back to the sending DMs, and I love what you said about, you said it earlier about women who do MLMs, that you're just taught to either sell, or you're taught not, or you don't know how to communicate. There's no middle ground. And this thing of nurturing relationships with DMs is so important. And I think, again, for many women, especially expat women, we suffer from imposter syndrome, right? Because we look different or we sound different, and then we're nervous about getting on the phone. The first job that I applied for in the US, I didn't get hired because I heard the woman didn't like my accent, and she was like concerned it would, show her company in poor light, or who knows what. Anyway,
Yes.
and that did affect me, because after that I became very uncomfortable about speaking on the phone, because I was like, oh, they think because I have an accent, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I don't deserve this job. So it's been a long journey for me as well. But thankfully, I've been able to kind of fight it and continue with my life. But coming back to my final question is, so while you do the collaboration, when is the right time to do the sale? When do you do it in a phone call? Do you do it in email? Supposing the person doesn't want to collaborate, you think this is a great potential client for you, and you say, hey, maybe we could do this together, or maybe you invite them to an event you're hosting, or live like this, and they are the client. When can you make that sale, or when can you monetize that person in your network?
Well, there are a few things that I teach regarding timing. Number one is, don't put expiration dates on people, which is what people do. Nurture the relationship, because relationships mature at different times. Understand where the person falls within your sort of matrix. And number four is follow up. So not everyone's ready to buy today. They might buy next week. They might buy next month. They might buy in 6 months. But it's important that you follow up. And then there's another study, 67% of people follow up, a few times, 3% follow up more than a few times. So people aren't following up.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the missing piece. But if you're asking the right questions, and you won't know what the questions are until you listen and pay attention. So Nina already has a network. I have a feminine leadership network, FEMME 500. So I'm not going to talk to Nina about joining my network. She runs her own network, but perhaps we can collab. If a collab is not possible, I may ask her for a referral. You see, but I'm listening. That's the key. But most of the time, people aren't listening. They're just trying to sell. Nina, do you want to sign up for FEMME Global 500? This is an amazing network. Come and join us. You see? And as far as the sale, if you're asking the right question, it will become evident, because the person will say, you know what, I need what you have to offer. I need to learn how to build social capital. You know what, I need to learn how to communicate powerfully. I need to learn how to monetize my network. I've joined 26 networks and no one has ever taught me how to monetize my network. I need to talk to you. It happens organically. No force.
Right. So it's just a question of making the time and nurturing the relationship and listening, as you say, because I think that's another thing many of us, and I think again it comes from imposter syndrome, because you feel you're not good enough, you're not listening and paying attention to what the person is trying to say or what their needs are, because the voice in your head is saying, oh, she doesn't like what you have to offer, or you're not good enough to build that relationship. So again, so powerful. So we are out of time, and I know you are in London, and it's I think
dinner time.
Dinner time, yeah. How can people find you? I know Carlota very kindly shared the link to your website, but if do you have anything to offer, any final words? Would love to hear.
Yes, absolutely. I wanted to share this tip, this expat tip. Own who you are, because what's beautiful about being an expat, when you go into a new community, you go into a new country, you're different. And it's easier to connect with people. You know how many times I connect with people because when I start talking in the UK, they go, "You're American." Oh my God, you're American. And that's an easy way to connect, And I'm like, yes, I'm American. Where are you from? Los Angeles. Oh my God.
Right.
It's so exotic because I'm American in the UK. So you want to use that to your advantage. But I have an event coming up, Networking in Stilettos, January 18th, live on Zoom. You can come and check it out. You can see this amazing framework, building social capital. It's actually 7 a.m. London time, 6 p.m. Sydney, Australia. Every country in between, if you're up. And you can join. And if you really want to connect with me, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. Send me a message. You can also go to femmeglobal500.com and sign up for Pretty Notes. So twice a week, I share networking tips, business tips, life tips. I share a little bit about my expat journey, my career, everything. So sign up for Pretty Notes. And that's pretty much it. But I'm so excited to be here. This was so much fun. And we should do another one.
Yes, definitely. No, I've learned a lot, and I'm so glad to have connected with you on LinkedIn, and and be part of your network and meet a fellow expat. Though now, of course, I did get my citizenship earlier last year, but I still consider myself an expat. Once you lived in one country, you always have part of that country in you. I feel I'm in limbo between India and the US. I don't belong in neither, but I also do belong, if you know what I mean. I'm sure you understand, and you've lived in more
You're
than
a woman of the world.
yeah.
Not too many women can say that. To have that experience. That's why it's so amazing to be an expat. When you to have that experience, not too many women, especially in the United States. Most American women haven't traveled outside of the US. So
Right. I think it definitely makes you more resilient and adaptable and empathetic. I think, it just makes you a better person. So with that, thank you so much for joining me today. It was lovely to chat with you. Thank you for sharing all these valuable tips and insights in your story. and look forward to continuing to speak with you online. And I think we might be doing a podcast in the future on expats. I think Carlota is joining us as well.
Yes,
So
we're going to
looking,
do a big panel of
yeah,
expat women. Yes, on the
very cool.
podcast, Billion
Yeah.
Dollar Rolodex.
I love it. I love it. Look, this is how networking and connections, build community and build social capital. And you're showing us the way. All right. Bye, everyone.
Thank you
Thanks for
so
joining us.
much. Bye,
Bye. Take
everyone.
care.
Connect, connect, connect.
Yes.